Now, if you've seen some of my other reviews, you already know that I love horror-themed games. Really, they've been around forever. But back then, for the most part, they were either pretty tame or they managed to fly under the radar for whatever reason. But then Mortal Kombat came out in 1992 and all hell broke loose. It was such a huge success that it started a whole lot of controversy about video game violence. As in whether or not it affects kids on some deep psychological level, and whether or not these violent video games should be banned or at least regulated.
California is now home to an estimated 175,000 to 200,000 gang members. From 1986 to 1991, in this state, arrests for juveniles for murder increased by 135%.
Wait a minute. Did he just blame gang violence on Mortal Kombat? Wow. Anyway, it was Mortal Kombat that triggered the ESRB rating system in 1994. Then in 1998, another fighting game came along that pushed the boundaries even further. And in fact, it would have been the first game ever to receive an AO rating. I say would have because this game was so controversial that it was cancelled and never officially released. Of course I'm talking about Thrill Kill, and damn, I first heard about this game through video game magazines, and it was just all over the place. I was just so fascinated with the concept of this game. It just looked so gory and so messed up that I just wanted to play it so bad, and I just could not wait for it to come out. But, as I said, it got cancelled, and I was so unhappy. Now, little did I know at the time, the unfinished version of Thrill Kill was all over the internet by this time. But I didn't get my first computer until like a year later. Yeah, I know I was way behind the times. So it's not like I had any way of downloading it. But as it turned out, I had this friend who had a friend who had another friend who downloaded the game, and what it comes down to is we all got copies of it. So that made me very happy. So what I ended up with was the early beta version. It was basically a bare bones game. It was really just gameplay and title screen, and that was about it. Oh, it also had the practice mode. But it had all the important elements, and the gameplay was completely intact, so that's the most important thing. The only problem is that it would take forever to load. Sometimes it would practically lock up, making you think that it was about to crash, but it actually rarely would do that. After a while it would just continue. It would also crash occasionally, but not really that often. And there was no background music or FMVs. Anytime you would get to a point where there would be an FMV, you would see this video showing Virgin's logo. So you can imagine how disappointed I was to beat the game, and instead of seeing a character's ending FMV, I would see this. Frankly, this animation just hurts my eyes for some reason, so I hate looking at it. I feel like it's gonna give me a seizure or something. But don't get me wrong. While it isn't fair to really criticize an unfinished game, I will admit that these are flaws, and they are kind of minor annoyances. But honestly, they really didn't detract from my enjoyment of the game. I mean, I enjoyed it that much. I just think this game is so much fun. But, after I played it for a while and, beat it with, so many characters and on so many difficulty levels, I just kind of found myself wanting more. I wanted a more complete version. So, some people didn't even believe it, but there was rumors going around that there was a nearly finished version of Thrill Kill that was circulating around the internet. And by now, I did have internet access, but I wasn't very internet savvy. Plus, I only had like a 56K modem, so it's not like I could really do any downloading. So a friend of mine directed me to this, let's just say that they sold certain unlicensed video game, third-party peripherals, and games. Only now do I realize what a huge gamble I was taking by trying to order something from a site like that. But it worked out fine, and I ended up with my very own copy of the nearly finished version of Thrill Kill. Now what's interesting about this version of the game is that it has more things that you can unlock, it has the FMVs, this really just about feels like a finished game. It also occasionally locks up and such, but it's not too bad. It depends on what you're playing it on. But what's really interesting about this version is that they did some mild censoring on it. By this point, I think they were figuring out that getting an AO rating might not have been such a good idea, so they were trying to aim for an M rating, and some of it's kind of silly. They left in all the gore and the violence, but the characters who were originally wearing thongs are now wearing briefs, and just minor little things like that. Basically, they removed all the borderline nudity and a lot of the sexual stuff. They also fiddled with the sounds a little bit. Belladonna's moan was replaced by a giggle, which wouldn't bother me except that it's the exact same giggle that Violet has. And using it on Belladonna as well kinda takes something away from Violet. It makes her a little less unique. The only change they made I can think of that doesn't involve sex or nudity is they changed the sound that Cletus makes when he takes a bite out of a severed leg. Basically, it goes from being a gross, munching, ripping sound to, well, this. Not only is that kinda silly, but it doesn't even make sense. I mean, you can't say yummy while you're biting into something. Well, I guess you can, but it come out like, whoa. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, for the most part, they took out some of the sexual stuff but left in all the extreme violence. I would guess that they probably just hadn't gotten around to taking those out yet. But who knows? You know, in America, violence is completely allowed in the media, but, you know, show a boob and everybody freaks out. But that's another rant for another time. Anyway, I hope you all appreciate the work that went into this episode, because I had a hell of a time getting these games to play. As far as I can recall, the best way to play Thrill Kill is with a modded PlayStation, as in it has that little chip soldered into it. The game is basically a lot less glitchy, and I think it even had background music, or at least the nearly finished version did. Even once I got a PS2 and didn't even really need a PlayStation anymore, I held on to that modded PlayStation because I knew at some point I was going to want to play Thrill Kill again. Unfortunately, someone let it get broken while we were moving, so now I no longer have a modded PlayStation. A Game Shark would have been an okay backup plan, but I no longer have one of those either. Then a friend of mine managed to find me an emulator, but it would only play the beta version and not the nearly finished censored version, and I really wanted both for this episode. Eventually we managed to get both versions working on our little portable PS1 using Breaker Pro. And that works great. The only problem is that the door no longer closes, so all I need is something to keep the door closed while I'm playing, and I'm golden. Also, kind of as a bonus, Lee managed to redeem himself by finding a version of Thrill Kill that is nearly finished and uncensored. So this is like the perfect version of Thrill Kill I always wanted. Only took me 10 years to get it. So for the rest of the episode, this is the version of Thrill Kill I'll be showcasing. Now, playing Thrill Kill is definitely a unique experience. You play as some sort of freak no matter what character you choose, and the second the match starts, 3 other freaks come right at you. Every character has what looks at first to be a health bar. Actually, it's kind of the opposite of that. It's called a kill meter. And rather than your bar going down as someone hurts you, your bar goes up as you hurt other people. So the more damage you deal out, the more your bar fills up. And once your bar fills up completely, you are granted the ability to kill one of the other players. Now at this stage, there are 4 different basic kills you can do, depending on which button you're pushing when you grab your opponent. You can hit them so hard they stick to the wall, hit them so hard they explode, you can decapitate them with 1 hit, which is what the computer always likes to do. Or my favorite, which is to hit them so hard that they stick to the ceiling and their blood rains down on you as you celebrate. Personally, I love the concept of the kill meter because it forces you to be a more aggressive fighter. To be honest, I'm normally not that good at fighting games, and when I do play them, I tend to do a lot of blocking, and I'm just a very defensive fighter. But Thrill Kill really puts me on the offense, and it just motivates me to just get out there and just kick ass. I mean, this is not the kind of game where, you can just kind of wait around for the timer to run out, and if your bar is higher, you win. No, you absolutely have to kill the other players before they kill you. It's kick ass or die, and horribly. And speaking of which... What was I saying? Oh, right. Aaron Kelta, one of the creators of the game, was quoted as saying that they really didn't hold anything back. They put in just about every sadistic little thing they could think of, as long as it didn't interfere with gameplay. By the way, the thrill kill that is the most sadistic, in my opinion, is this one coming up. Ow! Wasn't there a point I was trying to make? Oh yeah. So yeah, the game is violent, duh. That's a no-brainer, and you pretty much know that going into it. What caught me by surprise was how much I ended up liking the characters. Basically, here's how the story goes. Every single one of these characters has died and gone to hell. A demon called Maruka thinks that it would be cool to have them fight each other in a tournament, and whoever wins gets to be reborn. Each of these characters is shown as kind of a twisted, exaggerated version of what they were in their lifetime. One of my favorite characters to use is Violet the Contortionist. She is just so off the wall, and her moves are just so crazy to watch that it just makes her fun to use. And the fact that I can be a little bit cheap with her doesn't hurt. But I think my favorite character to use, even more so than Violet, is Dr. Faustus. There's just something so unsettling about a deranged doctor. Something about all that knowledge of human anatomy being put in the wrong hands. But aside from that, he's kind of a comical character. His moves consist of surprisingly graceful martial arts and some crazy dog-like behaviors, where he uses that bear trap on his face to actually bite people. It's just nuts. I think he is arguably the strangest character to ever come out of a fighting game. Now these two are the only characters that I really use consistently, but there are a lot of others that are just so cool to watch. Tormentor has some very brutal attacks and he screams a lot, which makes him kind of intimidating. He has this one kill involving chains, which, in my opinion, is a very obvious reference to Hellraiser. Belladonna's pretty cool. I've never had much luck using her myself, but she's interesting to watch. She's very, athletic with all these crazy martial arts moves she uses. In fact, she kinda reminds me of Catwoman, especially when she's wearing this outfit. Also, Belladonna's image is pretty popular, and she ended up being the poster girl for Thrill Kill. Oddball is a character that I actually kind of felt sorry for first time I saw him. It didn't seem fair that he's having to fight with his arms either missing or tied behind his back depending on which version of him you're looking at. But he more than makes up for it. When the computer's using him, he is very aggressive and he is just all over the place. He also manages to utilize his head and other appendages. Yep, you saw that right. This is probably the only game that has an ass rape attack. Or at least the only one that isn't hentai. Cletus is a redneck cannibal, which basically means he has kind of a Hannibal Lecter meets Deliverance kind of vibe. He has some great martial arts moves for no logical reason at all. And he has some of the most brutal kills. Personally, I don't care too much about him, but he is kind of a comical character, and when the computer's using him, he is very, very aggressive. In fact, I freaking hate fighting against him. He also has some kills that are very weird and kind of funny. I can't say I'm too big on Mammoth either. As far as I'm concerned, big, powerful characters are pretty much a dime a dozen. I think the smaller and faster and more agile characters are more interesting. That's just me. But I guess every game has to have one to round things out. As for Kane, no, not that Kane. This Kane. He's an unlockable character who is sort of, a mid-boss. When he shows up, you know that after you beat him, you've only got 2 boss fights to go before the end. He's another character that I kinda like to use. I don't use him too often because it's a little too easy to be cheap with him. But damn, those fire attacks are so much fun. Plus, he's really sadistic and he has an awesome laugh. He has this one certain attack that just cracks me right up. Yes, he farts fire. Kane from Soul Reaver would not be caught undead doing that. Judas is the first of 2 bosses, and he is quite possibly the biggest freak in the game, and that is saying something. His attacks are just insane, and he really makes full use of that strange anatomy he has. You know, looking at one of the alternate versions of him makes me wonder if maybe the creators of this game were fans of a certain 2D fighter. Nah. Predictably, the final boss is Maruka, since she was the one who arranged this tournament in the first place. She's fun to use, and she is unlockable. Unfortunately, you're unable to use her in tournament mode, so you can't, beat the game with her and see any sort of final FMV with her in it. Which is kind of a shame, because it'd be interesting to see what her backstory was. She is still fun to use in the versus and practice modes, though, if only because she is just so damn cool looking. Now, I'm sure someone will come along and correct me, but as far as I know, this is the only fighting game I've ever seen where the final boss was female, so that's kind of cool too. By the way, Maruka's level is a very blatant reference to Hellraiser. You basically look like you're fighting inside the puzzle box. There is one more character that is unlockable in the final version of the game anyway. Oh baby! He's called the Gimp, and you cannot play as him at all. Mainly he's just a dummy for you to smack around and practice with. But he has to be seen to be believed. More. Yummy. Not including the normal glitches that naturally come with an unfinished game, there are only a couple things about Thrill Kill that I would complain about. First of all, there's a reason why I haven't talked about the ending FMVs yet. They really aren't that great. Apparently Paradox commissioned some random Russian company and they only gave them about 2 weeks to do it, and it shows. The videos are very short and not very good quality, and they really don't tell you much about the character that you didn't already know going into it. The other thing is that Maruka is insanely cheap and nearly impossible to beat in the almost finished version of the game. And this is in the easier difficulty settings. In the harder ones, the game is almost unplayable at this point. Now don't get me wrong, she's the final boss, so of course she's gonna be hard. That's not what I'm complaining about. This just ticks me off because she's such a cool and powerful looking character. But seeing her pull such cowardly tricks as these really kind of kills that feeling and makes her seem kind of pathetic. Hell, you know what? This is what it feels like to fight Maruka. There, I could have made my point without even showing her. Still, I can't help but think even now that it's a shame that this game never came out. And to think that there was a time when Thrill Kill was nearing completion and a lot of people were looking forward to it. It was all over the magazines. They even had a booth at E3 of that year. We were so close to getting our Thrill Kill. But then the company that would have been putting the game out, Virgin Interactive, was bought by another company. I won't mention their name, I'll just say that they represent everything that's asinine about the video game industry. Their take on Thrill Kill was this: we don't feel that the game's content is appropriate regardless of who publishes it. When you look at Mortal Kombat, you look at a fighting game, as opposed to a sadistic killing game. Thrill Kill is a killing game. The product did not meet our standards for appropriate content. So not only would they not put the game out themselves, but they refused to sell it to any companies who wanted it. This is what gets me. It's not so much that they canceled the game, that happens all the time. It's that they decided to act like the morality police and tried to completely snuff out the game's existence as if they could protect the world from it. And if that isn't bad enough, they also didn't pay Paradox their final milestone payments, and Paradox had to learn about the game's cancellation through a news posting on IGN.com. Real professional. By the way, as this video is being made, the company in question is trying to buy Take-Two Interactive software. So, yeah, the people who thought that Thrill Kill was too violent and offensive and went out of their way to make sure that nobody ever got to play it are buying the rights to Grand Theft Auto. Try and wrap your brain around that one. What's really painful is seeing the game Wu-Tang Shaolin style that Paradox made with the Thrill Kill engine that they were so graciously allowed to keep. Personally, I can't really get into it because it's not